When you realize that someone you love is unfaithful, it's a punch to the gut. Unfortunately, it's not an especially uncommon punch to the gut. According to one survey, about 20 to 25% of men admit to cheating on their spouses, while 10 to 15% of women admit to the act. The real numbers are likely higher. After all, some people aren't exactly open about their infidelity. In a recent Reddit thread, the site's users shared their experiences with cheaters. We collected a few of the best stories, then cleaned them up for grammar. If you think you're having a bad day, keep these anecdotes in mind. Things could always be worse. Our first story, for example, is particularly heartbreaking. One of the nicest people I've ever met, extremely smart and diligent, pursuing a career in trauma surgery, and as down-to-earth as they come. Had been married to his wife for 2 years. On the anniversary of the day they first met, he returns home early from a 30-hour call to surprise his wife with flowers and her favorite dessert, only to discover her in bed with a total stranger. He was so worn out and lost. He merely left and returned to the hospital since he was unsure of what to do. He was sitting in the parking lot at 5 in the morning, slumped over and sobbing. He was just sitting there. He wasn't even carrying his phone. Story number 2. Flippin' Pokemon Go, of all things, helped me catch my ex. She indicated that Pokemon Go was using a lot of her data. I mentioned that she could view the amount of data an app was using in her settings. I went on to demonstrate to her that it wasn't, by pointing out that Tinder was utilizing a lot more data. The way it ended up was both sad and humorous. Story number 3. I was dating this girl a few years back, and I became really good friends with her brother. He appreciated my help during a difficult time for their family, after their father had abruptly passed away. 2 years into the relationship, the brother contacts me and asks to meet up for coffee and a serious conversation. Apparently, he caught his own sister with another guy, a mutual friend of ours. And this had been going on for like a year. Needless to say, I broke up with her. On the bright side, I'm still friends with her brother. Go figure. Story number 4. Me and my girlfriend were long distance, and she had a habit of going quiet sometimes. She'd been texting me for the last few weeks, but had made excuses not to come visit. I went to a party that my friend had organized. I met a friend of his who told me the host had a new girlfriend. I was surprised he hadn't mentioned her, so I asked who she was. This friend of his introduced me to my girlfriend. Turns out she'd told everyone that we broke up and had been dating my friend for about a month. She conveniently forgot to tell me, I guess. Story number 5. I found out my ex-boyfriend had been cheating on me. Upon walking into the apartment, he shared with his mother and 2 elementary-aged sisters. The youngest sister asked me, "When did you leave?" I asked her, "When was I here?" She responded, "You were here all night. I could hear you talking to Brendan." I had not been there for 2 days at that point. I asked him what she was talking about, and he blew bubbles for a few minutes before confessing. Good riddance. Blue bubbles, by the way, is slang that means having nothing to say, but still talking. We had to look that one up. For a moment, we thought that the guy was literally blowing bubbles. Story number 6. I went home and my husband wasn't home, which was weird for him at 8 p.m. An hour earlier, he had told me he was going home. I had a gut feeling and went to the apartment of one of our female friends, who he claimed was like a sister. Guess whose truck was there? I knock. No answer. Try the door, and it's unlocked. I walk into the living room. Nobody there. I hear noises in the bedroom. Walk in, and lo and behold, there they are. We tried to make it work over the next couple of months, but I couldn't get past it. I didn't even want him to touch me. We divorced 4 years ago. Story number 7. One day, my husband was getting ready for work, and I saw him packing his GoPro case. I thought, that's weird. Why would he be taking it to work? Some people would just leave it there, living by the mantra that ignorance is indeed bliss. But not this girl. When he jumped into the shower, I replaced his GoPro with mine and thought I'd look through the files when he leaves for work. My suspicions were on alert because he had just taken a trip to the Philippines with some friends. A guy's only weekend kind of thing. I fire up the camera and found 3 videos. There he is in all his glory with a Filipino prostitute, posing for the camera. I was enraged, but looking at this fool acting like he's an adult film star was hilarious. Story number 8. One night, she told me not to come over because she wasn't feeling well. But then, my sister wanted this hoodie back that she'd borrowed, so I thought I'd stop over with chocolate and a Slurpee. I knocked on her door. She came to the upstairs window with only a blanket wrapped around her and yelled, "I thought I told you not to come over." My sister needs her hoodie. "Who's that?" says some male voice from her bedroom. "Ah, I see how it is." "I'll talk to you tomorrow," she says. "Probably not. Have a good one." "What about the hoodie?" "Yeah." She threw it out the window to me. It was a cold walk home. Story number 9. Things had been a little shaky. I was working a lot and felt sapped when she wanted to go be social with friends, so I often stayed home. I'd wanted to do something nice for her for Valentine's Day, so I sent her friend a text asking if there was something that she may have mentioned she would like to do. As I was waiting on that text, I was in another room. I saw her phone buzz with her friend's name. The number was below the name, and since I had just sent her a text, I knew they didn't match. There are very few times my blood has been that cold. I called the number with my phone, and it rang and rang before going to voicemail. Needless to say, it was the other guy. I confronted her about it, and she said she was waiting to leave and had a bag packed in case I found out. She had no intentions of trying to work things out, so a month later, she moved out. Story number 10. I had a former coworker find out his wife was filming a lot of grown-up entertainment and being paid next to nothing after being married for a few years. He found out when he found one of her DVDs hidden in the house. He assumed it was a gift for his birthday in 2 weeks and watched it when she wasn't around. When he confronted her, her only reply was she was doing it for him. He imploded after that and needed counseling for a few months after the divorce was finalized. Story number 11. My ex-husband is epileptic. After he had a seizure one night, he was out of it and pretty disoriented. Before falling back asleep next to me, after I took care of him, gave him his meds, and wiped the drool from his face, he grabbed his phone, tapped something out, and then threw it directly behind him. The phone landed face up in my lap, showing a text to his mistress that said, "I'm in love with you." Story number 12. My mother-in-law told me my husband was cheating on me because everyone knew it, like everyone, except me. He was away on a business trip with his girlfriend, and I brought our kids over to my in-laws to see their new condo. My mother-in-law couldn't stand it anymore. She said, "He's cheating on you." It still took me a few minutes to comprehend. Afterward, I took my kids to a hayride and pumpkin painting activity because it was just the 3 of us at home for the rest of the long weekend. Postscript. I have been blissfully divorced for 10 years. Story number 13. It turned out that it had been going on for 2 years. He'd been grooming his social media to look like he was a single father in the house that I'd bought. He only planned on meeting up with her, having sex with her once with a condom out of respect for me, and then blocking her because I'd gained weight after having a kid and struggling with PPD. I found out when my husband plugged his phone in to charge in the kitchen. We'd spent the night celebrating a friend's birthday over Skype. I'd spent a couple of hours making a new recipe for dinner, as well as dessert. I went out to get a cup of water around midnight after what I had considered a great night, especially during quarantine. I saw his phone go off, and it was a message from an unsaved number saying, "I love you too." So of course, I opened the message to find He'd been telling this woman that he'd had nothing but a corn dog for dinner and he missed her and loved her. I went back to see an entire day's worth of messages, and then I confronted him. Story number 14. It turned out that it had been going on for 2 years. He'd been grooming his social media to look like he was a single father in the house that I'd bought. He only planned on meeting up with her, having sex with her once with a condom out of respect for me, and then blocking her because I'd gained weight after having a kid and struggling with PPD. I found out when my husband plugged his phone in to charge in the kitchen. We'd spent the night celebrating a friend's birthday over Skype. I'd spent a couple of hours making a new recipe for dinner, as well as dessert. I went out to get a cup of water around midnight after what I had considered a great night, especially during quarantine. I saw his phone go off, and it was a message from an unsaved number saying, "I love you too." So of course, I opened the message to find he'd been telling this woman that he'd had nothing but a corn dog for dinner, and he missed her and loved her. I went back to see an entire day's worth of messages, and then I confronted him. And that's it for this one, folks. Stay tuned for the next one.